What's going on, NFL fans? Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we're going to do a tier rankings for all the teams in the AFC. In the S tier is the team I think is going to the Super Bowl this year. F is the worst. A is the best. We're going to put 3 teams in each category except for the Super Bowl category. Let's get into it. Up first is the F category. I have 3 teams for you that I think are really going to struggle this year. The one is the New England Patriots. Next is the Titans. And then the last team on this list is the LA Chargers. All right, let's start out with the Chargers. They brought in Joe Alt and Ladd McConkey to a team that doesn't have a lot of weapons. Their offensive line struggled a little bit. They were a bottom 5 defense in points allowed. This team is just not very good. It's going to be a few years until Harbaugh gets this team going. The offensive line isn't very good. They have no receivers at all whatsoever. This offense is really going to struggle to score points. I think they're going to give up a lot of points as well. The Chargers are going to really struggle this year. And then the Titans. Will Levis, is he the guy? I'm not totally convinced. Their offensive line was terrible last year. They brought in J.C. Latham and Devondre Sweat, their 2 top picks in the NFL draft. Is that going to make a difference? I don't think so. They were 29th in passing yards, 27th in points per game. They brought in a washed Tony Pollard to run the ball. They let Derrick Henry walk. This team is going to really struggle, in my opinion. Hopkins is going to be 32 years old by the time the season starts. They don't have a lot of depth at the wide receiver position. I'm not a big fan of the Titans this year. I think they're really going to struggle, and they're going to be a bottom team in the AFC this year. And my last team is the Patriots. I think they're going to be the worst team in the AFC again. They brought in Drake May to compete with Jacoby Brissett at the quarterback position. I don't think Drake May is ready to be a quarterback at the NFL quite yet. And for me, it's better that he sits because the Patriots have no weapons at all whatsoever. They have a middle-of-the-road defense, maybe a little bit better of middle of the road. They were pretty good against the run last year, but they have no offense at all whatsoever. Their wide receiver room is complete trash. They have the worst wide receivers in the entire NFL. I feel bad for Jacoby Brissett, and I hope Drake May doesn't have to play this year because, man, it's going to be tough sledding. And the defense that's pretty good is going to be on the field so much. They're going to be gassed in fourth quarters of a lot of games this year because I see a lot of 3-and-outs coming for the Patriots offense. So in my F tier, we have the Patriots, we have the Chargers, and the Titans. The Titans are probably the best out of those 3 teams. They could be, a 7-win-ish team, 6 wins. I'm not a big believer in Will Levis, and I just don't think he has the weapons. Tony Pollard, in my opinion, is cooked, and Hopkins is getting older and older and older, and he's getting less productive year after year. All right, let's move on to the next tier. Next up is the D tier. The D tier and the C tier, it's pretty interchangeable. These 6 teams are all really close, in my opinion, battling for the bottom of the AFC. But for my D tier, I'm going with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Denver Broncos, and a team that's really going to surprise some people. They were really good last year, but I think they're going to regress considerably. That's the Miami Dolphins. All right, let's first start off with the Jaguars. They drafted Brian Thomas Jr., but the rest of their draft I didn't really love. They did some D-line and offensive line, but not any players when I watched the table I was like, oh man, they're going to change this franchise. They also have terrible cornerbacks. If Ronald Darby is your best outside corner, you're going to struggle, in my opinion, to play defense. I think their defense is just going to be okay. I think their offense, outside of Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis, he didn't really do anything in Buffalo, and they paid him a lot of money. I think that deal is going to blow up in their face. Brian Thomas Jr. is a rookie. I don't love the offense. They really struggled to run the ball last year. They ranked 24th in yards per game in running the ball. So I don't love the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they're going to struggle this year. And then next up is the Denver Broncos. They lost Russell Wilson, who actually played really good last year. If you look at the stats, he was a lot better than the media put it out there. And I don't know. We'll see if he has success with the Steelers. The Steelers' offense is not very good at all whatsoever, so it'll be interesting to see how Russell Wilson and Justin Fields play out in Pittsburgh. Denver also didn't do a lot in free agency at all whatsoever. That Russell Wilson deal really screwed up this team, so they don't have a ton of money, a lot of cap flexibility to go out and sign some free agents. And then the quarterback position. Bo Nix, which I think was overdrafted a little bit at number 12, and then Jarrett Stidham. So it's between one of those two guys. And their wide receivers are okay. Cortland Sutton, Josh Reynolds, and Marvin Mims. But nobody is like, oh my God, we're so scared to face the Denver Broncos wide receivers. So two less than mediocre quarterbacks. We'll see how Bo Nix's skill set translates to the NFL. But the wide receivers are just okay. Cortland Sutton and Josh Reynolds are like 600, 700 yards per year type of guys. They're not guys that are going to get over 1,000 yards. So I think this offense is going to struggle. Their defense is just okay. That's why I have the Broncos in the D tier. And next, the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins lost their top 3 free agents in Wilkins, Hunt, and the linebacker Van Ginkel. And they also lost their defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, who went to Philadelphia. He's a really, really, really good defensive coordinator, man. So I think the Dolphins are really going to struggle to stop other teams' offenses this year. They don't have Fangio anymore, who runs that awesome 3-4 scheme that he brought to Philadelphia, and he got a lot out of, not the best players in that system. Tyreek Hill had almost 1,800 yards last year, 1,799. Super close to that 1,800 mark. He's a remarkable player. But he is 30 years of age, so it'll be interesting to see over these next years, 30, 31, 32, if he can continue to use that speed to his advantage. He's a really good route runner too, but I just don't see how the Dolphins are a top team this year in the AFC. I don't see them winning over 10 games. I think it's going to be more like 7, 8 games, maybe even 6 games if that defense really struggles. They lost some offensive line guys too. Hunt is a really good interior offensive lineman, so they might struggle a little bit on offense to protect Tua. And he's in a contract weird situation right now. So are they going to pay Tua? Are they not going to pay Tua? They have a lot of questions to answer in Miami. That's why I have them in the D tier. All right, let's move on to C. Here we are with the C tier, everyone. And I picked most of these teams in the C tier over the teams in the D tier because I think they've drafted considerably better. So in the C tier, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Raiders, and the Colts. All right. First, we're going to talk about the Raiders. They were 8-9 last year. They got Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers-Johnson, the center. So they added a lot of help on offense. And I think Aiden O'Connell at the quarterback position, if he was a guy drafted in the first round and he had that kind of year, they'd be like, okay, let's see what he can do in the second round. So I think he's a little bit better than people think. And with Davante Adams having that chemistry for another year, I think they're going to be a little bit better on offense. And with Davante Adams and Brock Bowers, it just gives that offense so many more layers, right? And then adding Jackson Powers-Johnson, that center, he's one of the best centers in the draft this year. It's going to help them run the ball because they were terrible running the football last year. Now let's talk about the Raiders defense a little bit. They added Wilkins, the D tackle, who can really help rush the passer and stop some of these double and triple teams on Max Crosby. They also did really good at the end of the draft, bringing in Trey Taylor, the safety, and Dylan Lobby, the running back. So I just really like how the Raiders drafted this year. They were 9th in points against last year. So this defense, I think, is going to be even better than they were last year. That's why they made it into the C ranking. Then, next up, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. This team is pretty much the same team as last year, minus the quarterback situation. So they let the quarterbacks walk. They brought in some new quarterbacks in Russell Wilson. But I love the way the Steelers draft. Troy Fontanu, he could play tackle, he could play guard. And then they brought in Zach Frazier, the center. Amazing pick. Then they got Roman Wilson from Michigan in the 3rd round. Wow. And then they got Peyton Wilson in the next pick. They absolutely crushed it. Peyton Wilson is one of the best linebackers in college football last year. Roman Wilson's got great hands. He's a great possession receiver, so he should really help that offense in the passing game. I love the Steelers draft. The Steelers had one of the best drafts in all of football, in my opinion. Their defense is really solid. Only 19 points per game. They give it up. That ranks 6th, but they couldn't score or pass the ball. towards the bottom of the NFL. That's why they're not in the B tier. I'm not sure if Russell Wilson and Roman Wilson, adding them two guys to the offense, is going to be enough to get them over the hump and be, a top 15 offense in the NFL. That's why they're in the C level. And next, the Colts. Another draft I absolutely loved. And the Colts didn't do anything in free agency. They didn't really let a lot of players walk out of the building. They were top 5 in sacks last year. They're going to get Anthony Richardson back healthy. But look at this draft. Laiatu Latu, who was my best defensive player on my draft board this year. A.D. Mitchell from Texas, an amazing wide receiver. They just crushed it. Then they added an offensive tackle and the center, Tanner Bornolini. And then they added a ton of safeties and corners with their last few draft picks. I think the Colts did a really good job drafting too. And Anthony Richardson, year 2, coming off that injury, I think he's going to bounce back. And their wide receivers with Michael Pittman are pretty good. They're not an elite level of wide receivers, but they're pretty good there. So that's why my C teams are the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Raiders, and the Colts. All right, NFL fans, here is my B tier for the NFC. We're going to go the Buffalo Bills. And then we're going to go the Jets, which is going to surprise some people, and then the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns brought in Jerry Jeudy and Jameis Winston in the offseason and linebacker Jordan Hicks to an already stacked defense. They were the number 1 defense in the NFL. I look for that to continue, right? And I also liked who they drafted. They didn't have a first-round pick this year, but they brought in offensive guard Zach Zinter and D-tackle Michael Hall Jr. So they're building through the trenches, guys. And can Deshaun Watson come back from injury and bounce back? I absolutely think he can. And if they can win all those games with Joe Flacco, they definitely can win with Deshaun Watson. We'll see how he bounces back. But that defense is so good. They're going to give up less than 15 points per game, I think, this year. That's how good they are. The next team is the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers hopefully plays more than, 5 snaps or whatever it was last year. They brought in Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses to help protect Aaron Rodgers. They're going for it this year, guys. And they drafted really, really well. They brought in Olu Fashanu, the left tackle from Penn State, Malachi Corley, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. They brought in a lot of good offensive weapons. 2 running backs, a wide receiver, and a key offensive lineman. They did lose Bryce Huff on that defense, but I still think the Jets defense is a top 5 defense in the NFL for sure. Next, let's move on to the Buffalo Bills. Pretty much that whole defense minus Jordan Poyer, the safety, is coming back. Sean McDermott is just one of the best defensive minds in the NFL this year. I know Josh Allen lost a lot of weapons and Gabe Davis, he's like a half a weapon, and Stephon Diggs, but I think the team chemistry will be better without Diggs personally. But they also drafted pretty good. They brought in Keon Coleman, the wide receiver, the safety Cole Bishop, the running back Ray Davis. So I think this offense is going to do just enough to win that division. Their defense is going to be really, really good again. Lucky for them, the division that they're in isn't the best, right? I think it's going to be between the Bills and the Jets, depending on how healthy Aaron Rodgers is and if he can stay healthy. I think the Dolphins are in a transition year, so it'll be between the Bills and the Jets. The Bills, I just think, are a little bit better of a team. They're more cohesive of a team. They've been together for a lot longer than this Jets team have. A lot of new moving parts on offense for the Jets. I just think the Bills maybe win the division by a game or 2. All right, now let's move on to the last and final tier. Before I break down the teams in Tier A, I'm going to give you my Super Bowl pick. Again, it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they overdrafted Xavier Worthy a little bit. I think he's kind of a gadget guy. I don't know if he's going to pan out in the NFL with just that blazing speed. But until a team dethrones the Chiefs, whether it's the Ravens, the Bengals, or the Texans this year, I think those teams are my favorite to dethrone the Chiefs possibly. Patrick Mahomes is just on another level than anyone else. Travis Kelce is getting a little bit older, so we'll have to see if he can stay healthy. But if Kelce can stay healthy with that defense, I think the Chiefs have a chance at a three-peat. And that means my A-tier teams are the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Texans, right? CJ Stroud was so unbelievably good on third down last year. It was so impressive to watch game after game. And the Bengals won 9 games last year without Joe Burrow. And they got a little bit better. And then the Ravens, they drafted unbelievably well this year. I love the Ravens. They won 13 games this year. They're probably going to be right around that again next year. Can Lamar Jackson get over the hump? But there's one thing that you see about all these Tier A teams. In my opinion, they have the best quarterbacks in all the AFC. CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers are right up there too, and the Browns defense keeps them in Tier B. But elite quarterback play in the NFL gets you to where you want to go. It gets you to the playoffs, helps you win playoff games. And the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Texans have the best quarterbacks in the AFC, not named Patrick Mahomes. All right, let me know in the comments below. Do you like my tier list? I think it's pretty good this year, pretty solid. Like I said, the C and the D teams are a little interchangeable in my opinion. I just think the Jets defense and the Browns defense are going to inch them up into the B tier. And if they get anything out of Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson, they're going to be very good teams and tough to beat this year. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.